If you don't have your 20s in your 20s, you're going to have them eventually. And you don't want to be that person having your 20s, not in your 20s. It's not pretty. I've seen it. I'm seeing it now with some people. We're not going to name names, but it's not good.
Hi, I'm Sally Christensen, the founder and CEO of Argent, a women's workwear brand. And this is Work Friends, a podcast for those who take their work, but not always themselves, seriously.
Work Friends.
Hi, everyone. I wanted to take a moment to say thank you for listening to Work Friends. In just a few months, we've hosted conversations with women I deeply admire, and we're just getting started. I do have a favor to ask. If you could please take a minute right now to follow Work Friends on whatever platform you're listening on so you'll never miss an episode. And we'd especially love it if you could leave us a review or send an episode you've loved to a friend. Feel free to check out the show notes for more about Argent, too. We're so excited to bring you more inspiring guests and candid conversations about careers you won't hear anywhere else. Your support of Work Friends and of Argent means everything to us. Thanks for listening. My next guest is Errin Haines, a journalist, an MSNBC contributor, and the editor-at-large at The 19th. I'm honored to have her here because between her reporting and hosting The 19th's podcast, The Amendment, this is probably her absolute busiest season of work. For context, we're recording this a little over 3 weeks before Election Day, and Errin has been covering it extensively. An Atlanta native, Errin has a prolific career reporting for the Associated Press, the Los Angeles Times, the Orlando Sentinel, and the Washington Post, and she served 2 terms as vice president of print for the National Association of Black Journalists. Then, in 2020, she joined the founding team at The 19th, a nonprofit independent publication that reports on gender, policy, politics, and the many ways they all intersect. Errin is someone who not only has a front row seat to history, but plays such a vital role in helping to record it. I'm so excited for you to meet her.
Hi.
Errin, welcome.
You know what? Thanks for having me.
You know, we run a really smooth operation here, as you can tell.
Listen, I know from podcasts that, this is more than a notion. So I'm glad to be here. I'm happy that we're doing this. Just look at us, a couple of podcast hosts, just chopping it up. Let's do it.
That's right. I just want everyone to know that I was 50 minutes late to our own podcast recording.
I mean, it's LA time. What is time? Time is a construct in this town. I understand. I get it. Get me a chance to get some caffeine because I'm on East Coast time on the inside.
I really appreciate that perspective, though. I think this is actually something that a woman that we have come in about once a year to do a team building exercise. She made the comment that stuck with me years ago. Her name's Julie Bennett, so I'll plug her. But she said to lead with grace and to recognize that people aren't intentionally doing these things.
Absolutely.
So I think that point of view and perspective is critically important because
totally.
Oftentimes we assume the worst.
Yeah, it's not about you. And P.S., you're going to need it, at some point too. So yes, give grace because you're going to need grace.
Exactly.
Totally.
So welcome to Work Friends.
Thank you.
This is going to be fun. But before we even get into anything, and there's a lot to get into, we're going to start with an icebreaker.
Okay, let's do it.
Your first job, your worst job, and your dream job.
Oh my God. Okay. My first job, which was actually my first dream job, I was a seasonal employee at the Gap. And let me tell you, nobody folded those shirts better. My little discount was the best. I was working at the mall. I was 15. It was exciting. It was an exciting time. I loved, I know the youngs don't really understand what preppy means now, but when preppy used to mean something, I was all about the Gap. And so when I finally got hired there to work for those few weeks, it was what a time. Worst job? Oh my gosh. This was also mall related. For reasons we won't get into because we don't have enough time on this podcast, I was contracted to promote these storm windows at a Sears, I think it was. And I was not good at that at all. I think I might have lasted 2 days. I don't know that this was I hope it wasn't a commission. I blocked this job from my memory. I'm surprised I'm remembering it now, but it was not. It was not my best work. Oh my God. I was in high school. It was not my best work. So let's move on. Dream job. I've had 2 dream jobs. One was the job that I wanted since I had been an intern at the Associated Press. I wanted to be, when I was an intern, there was I found out that there was a job that existed at the AP. It was national writer on race and ethnicity. And I was like, I get to write about race for like the whole country, the whole world, for like this huge news organization. That would be the best thing that I could possibly do. Like I knew that, in my early 20s. And so I actually finally got to do that job when I had been at the AP just a little over a decade. I got that job, and it was really, at that time, I felt like the pinnacle of my career because, just writing about folks whose stories were undertold and untold, and writing about people, kind of holistically and not just in terms of their identity, just really felt like my best and highest use in that moment. Fast forward to, 2020 and helping to launch the 19th. I mean, this is my new dream job. Like our CEO, Emily Ramshaw, literally created my new dream job. And, to be able to write about gender and race as like the main story in this country and like the unfinished business of our democracy, like that, it does not get any better than that. So I'm currently in my dream job.
If you weren't doing this, what would your dream job be?
Wow. Let me see. White House calligrapher. I could do that. Definitely interior designer, high-end interior designer for like boutique hotels. Could do that. Traveling for a living, just going to these hotels and eating all the food and posting pictures and writing about it. Could definitely do that. Moodang's handler could also do that. Definitely available for that. If that opens up, keep me posted.
Oh my goodness.
I hear some pandas are coming to DC. I could also be their handlers as well. Yes.
Okay, now I want to get into your upbringing a little bit. So you grew up in Atlanta.
Yes.
I grew up in Savannah.
Yes.
You now are back in Atlanta.
Yes.
I want to hear what it was like growing up there and what stands out to you
from
your childhood.
I love this question because I love Atlanta so much. Like, I mean, people within moments of meeting me, I'm going to figure out some kind of way to work in the Atlanta of it all because I am a devout Atlantan. I really mean that. I was a practicing Philadelphian for about 9 years before I moved back to Atlanta this summer. So, yeah, I mean, Atlanta, the thing about Atlanta is that, as a young Black girl growing up there, I just had so many examples of Black excellence, not as like an exceptional thing, but just as completely normalized. The expectation from everyone, for all of us, was that we could do anything, we could be anything, and that we would do and be anything. And that we also were doing, whatever we were doing would be a credit to the race, would be a credit to the city. And so that gave us a real sense of pride, like from a very early age. Like everybody from the bus driver to our principal to our parents and our parents' friends was like, yes, you can do it. Like, and they were doing it. They were examples for all of us. And so I don't really know that I realized how special that was until I traveled and went away and kind of saw that not everybody had a Black mayor their whole life, or not everybody could watch the news and see Black people, delivering the news even long before I knew I wanted to be a journalist. Like there were so many examples of that. So like it was presented to me as an option of something that I could do. Right. And that was not always the case. I realized in a lot of other places, when I went other places, I would be surprised to not see that was not the norm. So many Black people doing in so many positions of authority or just, doing any job that you could think of, that there was somebody that looked like me that was doing that. And that's just a normal day in Atlanta.
If you can see it, you can be it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is critical and one of the reasons that our Work Friends franchise exists, because I grew up in a place where I don't know that I saw as much diversity of career. There just wasn't as much industry where I grew up. And so it was really like doctor, lawyer, banker, or mom.
Yes.
So I'd love to hear more about the examples of like work and career that were modeled for you, and when did journalism come into the mix for you?
So when I was growing up, we would sit down for dinner and we were not allowed to watch television while we ate dinner unless we were watching the local news. And so, of course, I wanted to watch television. So I would say, yes, let's watch the news, turn it on. So I grew up watching the news and specifically watching this Black anchor woman, Monica Kaufman, now Monica Pearson, but grew up watching her, and she, looked like me. She looked like my mom, and so she delivering the news, and she's somebody that I trust that's in my, in my kitchen, in my living room every day. So that really had an effect on me as like somebody who was important and who was doing an important job, right? Informing people about what was happening in our city every day. And then, the other thing that I think probably had an effect on me was that we got our hometown little paper every week. It was called the South Fulton Neighbor. And, I got to see what my friends were doing. I got to see what my friends' parents and other people in my community were doing. If I did something at school or in one of my extracurricular activities, maybe that would make the newspaper, or one of my friends would be in the newspaper. And so like the importance of local news was something that was instilled in me like really, really early on. I think my curiosity, or maybe, nosiness, depending on how you would describe it, was encouraged from like a really young age. Definitely one of those people, I don't know if you ever see those memes on social media, like, were you one of those kids that got in trouble for talking too much when you were in school? That was definitely me. So like anybody who is having that experience, you have a bright future in journalism. And I had a short attention span. I like to learn about different things all the time. So by the time I get to college, and my mom was like, you need to figure out a major because you're not moving back in here when you, finish school. It was like, okay, well, all signs pointed to journalism. And I tried it and never looked back.
It's actually remarkable that you knew from such a young age.
Look, I don't want to sit here and pretend like I was born with like ink in my veins or anything like that, but I was good at writing. I liked talking to people and asking people a lot of questions. And I liked learning about new things all the time. Now, did I know that was going to translate into a career in journalism? I did not until I got to college. In fact, I thought I was going to be on a very different path. I was like a classically trained pianist for my whole childhood. I started when I was 5, thought I was going to go to school to do that for a long time, but realized in high school that probably, again, my attention span issues were like, I'm not doing this for a living. I love it, but this is not really what I want to do with my life. But I wasn't sure when I went to college what I wanted to do with my life.
Oh, what an incredible flex to just have that, though. The thing I never did. One of my biggest regrets. I studied German growing up and I lived in Germany, and they take a gap year between high school and college, which I think would be so helpful.
Yeah.
To your point, yes, you were drawn to journalism, but that can manifest in so many different ways and to so many different careers. And so I think the real world experience coupled with academia, coupled with exposure, like that's sort of the necessary for me, like the way that I operate, that's sort of necessary to help guide and shape where we land.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think when I was like the internships that I did when I was in college, those were formative for me because it's so much more. Not that I didn't have a great education. I did. Shout out to Oglethorpe University. But I really loved, those summers when I was in a newsroom doing the work. Like I was so excited and so like ready to be doing that. It's like, wait, I can get paid to do this for a living? This is great. Go out, meet somebody. They tell me about something I had no idea about. I come back and tell everybody else. It's like this is a living. I was hooked pretty much from the beginning.
One of your earliest forays, if I am remembering correctly, into journalism was at the Atlanta Daily World.
Yes. That was my very first. So I'm still in college. My school paper was not going to do what I needed it to do. I'm competing with people that, went to all these prestigious journalism schools. I didn't have that, but I knew that this is what I wanted to do. So I'm like, how am I going to get the experience I need to get? I'm going to go and work at a real paper. And so I had a friend that said, there's this black paper that publishes a couple of times a week. You could probably go over there and get some experience. You could offer yourself up and see if they need any help. And, they take freelancers. And I'm like, great. So I go over, it's downtown, it's on Auburn Avenue. And I go in and meet the publisher and say, introduce myself, say I'm a student and I'm looking to get some experience and let me know if you need any help. My first story ran like that same week. They're like, how soon can you get started? And I'm like, what? Yeah. It was a book review. I remember that. It was a book review. And I ended up staying first for a whole summer. Basically, whenever I was not at my job that I was, working to pay for college, I would go, anytime I was not there. And then after I'd been there for a summer, they were like, well, guess we should probably start paying you. You've been hanging around here. I was so happy to get the experience. And I already had a job. But I needed, to get some articles published. And so then I ended up staying for about a year. And it was, probably the time that I learned the most, I mean, it was foundational for me as a journalist because one, like there just really weren't enough of us to not know how to do everything. And I'm talking about from writing the stories, we're passing the stories around to each other to edit the stories. We're at that time still printing them out, cutting them out with razor blades and pasting them down on the board. Like we put that paper together. When the paper came back from the printing press, we were folding them up and putting them on the trucks to go out and be delivered. Like we knew every aspect of that paper. And so I really learned about and developed a deep love for what we were doing as print journalists. But then also because it was a Black newspaper, like the focus was on the, holistic experiences of Black people in Atlanta, and so everybody from the mayor and city hall all the way down to, the small business that was on, in the neighborhood that we were based in, the whole city was open to us. Anything that we deemed, newsworthy to go in the paper, like we could go out and we could, with our notebook and pen and ask questions and take pictures and come back. And so I just learned that our stories mattered, right? Because so much of what I wrote was on the front page of that paper. And that made me feel good, because it's like, okay, this is important. These people are important. What they're doing is important. And so that was something that I took with me even after I left the daily world, that like Black people's stories were important and that I shouldn't ever have to make the argument that we were were worth covering.
I can't think of a better experience. Just
it was great.
Jumpstart your career.
It was great because we were fearless and we didn't know what we didn't know.
Oh, yeah, Miss Beautiful quality.
Yes. And it was a great place to learn and also to make mistakes. But really, we were just encouraged in every way to get out there and go places where so many of the people that read our stories couldn't go.
How do you think you got your foot in the door to begin with? Was it because they were understaffed and were desperate for help?
Definitely.
Okay.
Definitely was taking advantage of, I saw there was a need. There was a need that I was happy to fill.
Yeah,
and I was cheap.
Yeah. The free cheap.
Yes.
Those experiences though are invaluable, but I also think signing up for any task, even if it's not directly related to the thing that you want to be doing, is necessary.
Yeah.
Because it opens a lot more doors too. And I think that sometimes I've seen in the current generation that is entering the workforce that there's a little bit of resistance and reluctance to sign up for those more menial tasks.
Yes.
That's where all the growth happens and opportunity comes from.
That is such a good point. There was nothing that I was not willing to do. And for me, like I didn't feel like I was being exploited or taken advantage of at all. Like I was a sponge. Like I wanted to learn how to do all of these things. I was very interested in every aspect of that newspaper. And I will also say this, any time that I could also get with the publisher who was a Black woman who had spent her career in like legacy traditional journalism. She had been at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution for years and then came back to run her family newspaper. And I got to work under her. Her name's Alexis Scott. She's like my journalism fairy godmother. And, for her to edit me and for her to encourage me in the way that she did, like that was amazing. And just to be able to be in her office and listen to stories, from her career and anything that I could do to help out, just to be around her, to get some of that knowledge. Just, I was more than willing to do that. That was a gift to me.
Yeah, I think that I was similar. I was just grateful to be wherever, whoever was willing to employ me. It was a gift, So, and I would do anything that I needed to, or that was asked of me. I mean, within reason, but I would really do everything.
And not that, you were just grateful to be there, but also, I mean, yes, you saw it as the opportunity that it was.
100%.
And you were willing to work hard.
But I think your story, that's exactly what happens though. And that I'm now on the other side of that, where if you're willing to sign up for tasks that are maybe outside of what's directly on your job scope and you can deliver on those, and you just earn more responsibility, more mentorship, more time from the rest of the team. There's just more opportunity that unlocks from that.
We don't get to be who we are and where we are without those experiences.
That's right. Yeah, I'm probably still a little bit like that. Like if we're both,
definitely same.
That's probably a reflection of our.
We're still raising our hands.
Yes. Yeah. So you would then go on to report at help me out in this order: the LA Times,
yes,
the Orlando
Sentinel,
yes, and the Associated Press.
Yes.
What was influencing your move from publication to publication, and what did the growth look like in that chapter of your career?
Geez, well, my direct deposit was influencing my decisions at that time. No, I mean, look, so the Daily World gets me to my first daily internship, which was at a paper in Newport News, Virginia, the Daily Press. And the Daily Press at that time was owned by the Tribune Company. And I find out when I'm doing this internship that the Tribune Company has a program for minority journalists. It's a 2-year fellowship. And I'm like, 2 years of guaranteed employment? My mom's going to be thrilled if I can get into this, right? Because she's already told me, again, first word I learned was scholarship. Second word I learned was you can't come home after college. So I got it. I mean, she didn't really mean it, but she certainly didn't want me thinking that was plan A, right? So this opportunity comes up and I'm like, I have to get this fellowship. Like I'm wanting to do this. And so I apply and I end up getting it. And the first year of this fellowship was at the Los Angeles Times. So the reporters in this program all went to the Times for a year, and it was extraordinary. It was rigorous. We were, we got training before we were just kind of unleashed in the newsroom, and I got to cover courts. I got to cover county government. I got to cover science and education. And by the way, like, under the tutelage of Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists, in my early 20s, like, it was incredible, who were also very generous. Again, like, people that we could ask anything. We see them with a story on the front page and you could say, hey, tell me how you got that story, or tell me, how you reported it. How did you put this together? And they would take the time to talk to us about that. Like, that was invaluable at that age. And so the year and some change that I spent in LA at the Times was, I mean, it really was my kind of toehold in, I think, in the industry, where I was like, okay, I'm doing this. I can do it. Like, I will make it. I really felt like that for the first time. And I think my mom did too. I remember giving her a few of my business cards and people would randomly call me and say, hey, I met your mom. I want to talk to you about a story. I'm like, Mom, you cannot be giving out these business cards to people. But she was so proud, and that was really touching because, when I told her I wanted to be a journalist, she was just like, all right, well, as long as you can pay your rent and you have a place to live, that sounds great. But no, she is like my biggest cheerleader. But no, I mean, so from the LA Times, the way that program worked, the group of us that had been in this fellowship at the Times together, after our first year, we got farmed out to another Tribune paper. And that's how I got to the Orlando Sentinel, which honestly, I did not know much about Orlando at that time, outside of like Disney, I'm like, and maybe NASA. I'm like, what else is going on in Orlando? But man, Florida news is the best. I miss Florida news so much. The 2 years that I was there, I covered 4 hurricanes, animal attacks. I wrote about felon reenfranchisement. I mean, I covered it all. The only thing that I did not cover that I wanted to cover, I was in line to cover a shuttle launch because I really, really wanted to see that. And I didn't get to do it before I left. But I mean, man, no shortage of stories in Florida. And so that was a really great time too, in my career. A lot of young people were at the paper and we all were just very eager and really students of the industry and of the craft. And so we were constantly just kind of talking to each other about that. But we had to be a little family, like we were the ones that were young and single and childless, which meant that we could work all the holidays. And so we'd make Thanksgiving together or Christmas together. And, and also, didn't suck to be in Florida at that time of year, for a holiday. But also, yeah, I mean, we bonded. I mean, these are people that are in my life to this day, and it's been 20 years, since I worked at the Sentinel. But that was a really great time. And then the Associated Press. I mean, that was the last internship that I'd had, and it's basically as soon as my fellowship was up, they called and said, "Do you want to come back?" And I was just like, "Oh." And so not only did I get to go back, but I got to go back to my hometown bureau of Atlanta, which is where I'd interned. And it was, I mean, I loved that job. I did not expect to go back to Atlanta that soon, but to write about my hometown, really for a national audience, I'm getting to cover, civil rights icons like Andrew Young and Joseph Lowery and John Lewis. I'm covering, these historically Black colleges that I grew up, my mom, my grandparents attended these schools, and now I get to tell the rest of the country things about these places. Like I get to cover these mayoral races, just all kinds of things about the city that I knew and loved, and like I get to tell people about. That just really was pretty incredible. Yeah, I loved working at the AP. I did not expect to come back, like I said, as soon as I did. But yeah, I mean, fate intervened, and when they came calling, I absolutely jumped at the chance because it was a news organization that I loved in the place that I loved. So didn't get any better than that.
There's a lot that jumps out from what you just said. One, I think your mom, she did a lot right. I can say just by knowing you, but I do think that encouraging you to pursue your career and to be economically independent it's so invaluable. My mom also always said that.
Yeah.
Because for me, a lot of my friends just ended up in relationships where they're not working,
Listen, when I finished college, my mom told me, take your 20s. Your 20s are for you, right? Like do what you want to do. That's what men do, right? They may not have a dime, but they know who they are, right? Because they figure it out in their 20s. Like that's what you should do. You should have fun. You should work hard. You should not be making decisions based on anybody else, even her, because when I moved away, I moved across the country and she was like, see ya, you can come home. You can always come back, but like you need to go out into the world. And I mean, this is somebody who, in her early 20s, she becomes a flight attendant for Delta Airlines where she spends the next 30 years. So like she is traveling the world as well. So, but like she knew that there was a world out there that was bigger than Atlanta. And she wanted that for me too. And also for me to be focused on who I was going to become. Right. And not necessarily in relationship to somebody else.
It's so necessary at that age. I think that is the second thing that jumped out to me. It's the independence and the confidence for both her and you to take that leap. I did something similar after undergrad. I picked up and moved to Chicago and didn't have a job. And it's very unique coming from the Southeast, especially. I feel like people don't really leave home. It was hard for me to get anyone to move with me. And so I just did it.
But you figured it out
and grew more and experienced more in like those 3 years than I think any other time in my life. It's just a no strings attached, nothing to lose, no downside time. And I entered, I got a banking job, and this was in 2007.
Yeah.
Before the crisis. Yes. And because I wasn't paid enough, I just saw, I had a front row seat to all the action and was learning so much and was grateful to have that experience and opportunity.
And I hope you had some fun then too.
More fun than could be recorded, but we could talk about it later.
We won't talk about that on this.
Chicago,
but
of course, had fun.
I was going to say, but you were in Chicago, so it was also fun too, right? I mean, look, and it didn't cost a lot to have fun back then, or not as much as it does now. But I mean, yeah, like because the thing of it is, and this I've seen this to be true, as I have gone on in life. If you don't have your 20s in your 20s, you're going to have them eventually, and you don't want to be that person having your 20s not in your 20s. It's not pretty. I've seen it. I'm seeing it now with some people. We're not going to name names, but it's not good.
It's so true though. In college, I opted for social over classroom, and in my 20s, I was working, but I was burning it from both ends. I think I learned just as much from being social as I did from being at work. And like, I cannot encourage people enough to just get to learn humans, that is, I think, my greatest skill set at this point. It's like networking and connecting with people, and it benefits me in my job, and it's always benefited me in my career. It's that cultivation of relationship.
Yes. Go hard while you still have the metabolism and don't need 8 hours of sleep.
Let's be honest. It's not happening now for me. It's
soft pants by 7.
That's right. Argent is a clothing brand on a mission to upgrade the working woman's wardrobe, remove barriers to success, and help women navigate their busy lives with beautiful, versatile, and functional apparel. Just in time for the holiday season, explore the newest arrivals, including all new suit silhouettes in our signature seasonless wool, and chic and cozy knitwear that's perfect for gifting. This happens to be my favorite collection, and it's infused with Argent's signature bold colors and functional details like interior pockets and blazers, and smart cuffs on sleeves that scrunch and magically stay in place. Visit argentwork.com to shop the new collection and join the community on Instagram @Argent. If you're open to it, I'd really like to ask about working at the Washington Post.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned in an interview at The Cut that it was the first time you did not thrive in a professional role.
Yes.
And I want to get into that because I think it's so bold to admit that and to talk about that. And I think that those conversations are really the kinds that we want to be having here because someone is standout as you, so accomplished as you. We all have those experiences, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, that was definitely the most trying time of my journalism career because I mean, I get to the Post and, had been recruited to come work there, basically had been told, you're going to be a star. The trajectory at that point had been, nothing but up, really. And so, but then I get there and it was not that, right? I mean, I was struggling. I was not finding my footing and I was not the journalist that I had been up to that point. And I couldn't figure out why. And I didn't know what to do about it. And it was the kind of thing where like, you can get in a cycle where you have a crisis of confidence and it's just a self-fulfilling prophecy. Right. And so, by the time we part ways, it was just like, let me get out of here before I really start to internalize what these people are trying to tell me about who I am as a journalist.
Yeah. What challenges were you coming up against?
Well, first of all, like I just wasn't, I don't know if it was the culture or that I just was not a Washington Post reporter, like whatever the mold was, in that place, like it wasn't me. And so I was not gelling with editors necessarily. Work that I thought I was doing that was good was not necessarily how they felt. And so, and I just was having a hard time kind of finding my way there.
Did you turn to any mentors or anything in that moment? Was there anyone that could be a resource to you?
Yes. And I mean, there were definitely people in the building who were supportive, but I don't think they really knew what to do with me. And so then I didn't really know what to do with them.
Yeah. I mean, I think recognizing that we do have a tendency or we can go into the spiral of then getting in our own way.
Yes.
And internalizing something that isn't even a reflection of who we are. It's just not always a fit.
Yes.
Is a really healthy perspective.
Yeah.
I think, we've had experiences where I've had to let people go and I think that they will thrive elsewhere, but it's a two-way street, and when it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's the same in human relationships.
Yes.
And so I think trying to keep it professional and not make it personal too, and not become our entire identity.
Yes, because I took it really, really hard because like I said, that had never happened to me. Like I was somebody who was good at everything that they tried to do. So like that I was not good at this when I felt like I was built for this, right? Like that was very disorienting for me. But like what I did not realize was that for people who are, achievers, thrivers, everyone hits that wall at a certain point in their career, but nobody talks about it. And so you don't know that that happened to somebody else. And that on the other side of that, they end up leveling up if they take the right steps or if they are able to figure it out, like they end up even better than they were before they had the setback. Right. So that's why I can talk about it now, but it was very painful when it happened. And like I said, like there were just very few people that I knew that this had happened to that I could talk to about it who could really say, nope, you're going to be fine. We're going to figure this out. And so, yeah, I mean, I had to figure it out after that. But because I did, I was in such a better place after that. For people for whom this is happening or for whom this has happened, I don't want them to stay stuck in that place.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the beauty and the magic of what's happening around women specifically right now is that we're having conversations like this. We're being more vulnerable and what you do is inherently creative and vulnerable. Like you're putting if you're doing your job right, like you're pouring your heart and your soul into your writing.
Yeah. And my name is literally on every single, thing that I'm producing.
I imagine it's impossible not to make it personal in some capacity and internalize, a lot of different feelings. But I also think, to your point, resilience is one of the most powerful characteristics that we can have in business and professionally. And that if you can take these moments and step away from the personal and sort of identify the root cause of what's happening. And sometimes it's as simple as this isn't a fit. And sometimes it's things that are outside of your control.
Yeah.
But also like there's growth in it for you as well. So acknowledge and understand where you can grow and maybe like, where your shortcomings are. It brings us to a completely different stratosphere if we're able to have that perspective and point of view. And it happens to everyone in some capacity. It's inevitable.
Yeah. And look, I mean, if I can be honest, I think that there is a very specific resilience that comes with being a Black woman and being raised as a Black girl that also kind of helped me push through that moment. I mean, like I said, the Atlanta of it all, the confidence that instilled in me, but my mom and her giving me a very strong sense of self from a very young age, like in that moment where I was devastated, where I felt like I had failed, right? Like, I mean, being able to tap into and remember the person that my mom raised, right? The person that she helped me realize that I am, and, the place where I come from, where like, no, like I'm going to be fine because like, this is who we are and what we do. So like, yes, this has happened. Yes, we can be hurt about it, but also like get up, dust yourself off, and let's figure out how we're going to move forward.
Thank you for sharing it too. I think that we're going to now, shift and talk about the 19th, but I think that I imagine that just from my experiences at Argent, that you're experiencing micro failures all the time. I think that failure means that you're pushing the limit. And it's what men are celebrated for constantly. And it's what women haven't been able to talk about enough, because we're all painted as, quote, failure sometimes just because we're powerful and we're doing something right and we're on the right track. And that doesn't work in a patriarchy.
Yeah.
And I think other times, like women are put, I forget what's this called when they put women in CEO positions that are like high stakes.
Glass cliff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are a lot of dynamics at play, but I think to just continue fighting and continue going and to talk about it differently is so necessary. And fast forward to the 19th, which is where you are now, that's a startup.
Yeah.
And you have to go into a startup not knowing what a startup is. So it's that blind naivete you were talking about early in career that we all have to have. That delusional optimism is what makes it work. And that like masochistic, resilience of like, because you're going to get beaten down so many times. I imagine your experience in the Washington Post actually set you up for that.
I think so. I think that's true. And just, one more point on what you were just saying. I mean, it is about removing the shame.
Yes.
Right. I mean, that is very important, because when you are an only or a few, right, you feel like there's just little room for error, no room for error. Right. And you can't let people see you make mistakes, because if that happens, where's the opportunity for the next woman? Because, of course, you represent your entire gender. Right. and sometimes your entire race and gender. And it's just like, if you make a mistake, then they're never going to let the next one, so you have to make sure that you look like you have it together at all times. And if you don't have it together, well, what happened here? And no, like
100%.
We are human beings. We are not perfect. We are going to mess up, and it is not always going to be perfect. And certainly, journalism is not as glamorous as it sometimes may look, just because I have on concealer and lip gloss. So yes, on to the 19th. I mean, look, and I have said this so many times, like you talk about my whole career really leading up to us deciding to take this leap and launch this newsroom. Like for me, by the time I said that I was going to, do this with Emily, like for me, the risk was not in starting the 19th. It was really in staying in legacy and like doing the same thing that we had been doing and hoping for a different outcome, hoping that we could cover gender in our politics differently, hoping that maybe finally half the population could be the main story instead of like some kind of sidebar, hoping that women's issues, could somehow be, the issues that we were talking about as a country, because we're half the electorate, right? Like that was not where I was anymore. And that is a fight that I certainly think needs to continue in a lot of our newsrooms, but it was just not a fight that I was willing to have anymore. And so for me, I thought, if this doesn't work, sure, like, we go back and get jobs somewhere else. But if it can work, like, wouldn't it be something? Wouldn't it be something to make this happen and to try to do this differently and to show people that it doesn't have to be the way that it is now?
Yeah, and what was the pitch? Like, it's an independent nonprofit newsroom, right? Like, what does that mean? And what was the pitch to you coming in?
Okay, got to tell my origin story here. So, I mean, literally, Emily Ramshaw, my now CEO,
who we love,
and we'll get into that too. Like Emily, I did not know at all before we started the 19th, and she DMs me on Twitter, what was then known as Twitter.
No,
yes, and she says, "Hey, I want to talk to you. I'm very impressed by your work, and I'd love to have a conversation." And I'm like, who is this and what does she want? And I look and I see that she's, editor-in-chief of the Texas Tribune. And I'm like, well, I'm not moving to Austin, so I don't know what she's calling about, but let's find out. I'm in the drive-thru at a Wendy's, like ordering a Baconator or something. And she, but I call her and she's just like, hey, I am an admirer of your work. I've been following you and I want to talk to you because super secret, but like I am thinking of launching this newsroom that is focused on women in politics. And I was just like, say more. I mean, I'm literally on the campaign trail covering 6 women running for president, covering the most diverse field of people who would ever run for, president on the Democratic ticket. And yet, like, I'm still working in a political journalism world where we're still talking about race and gender the same way that we've been doing. And I'm just like, this is not acceptable. Like, this is the story. It's not a story. Like, race and gender are the story of our time. Why are we not acting like that? And so she was singing my song, basically, when she called me that day. And I said, you know what? You raise some money and I'm in for this. Like, let's keep talking. But like, you keep me posted and I'm interested.
That gave me chills.
That was the beginning. And Emily is, look, she is always up for a challenge, especially when it comes to fundraising. And so within a couple of months, she had raised enough for us to have a very serious conversation about starting the 19th. And so like a few of us come down to this like super secret meeting in Austin. Like we're at an Airbnb having, spending a couple of days, like really just kind of laying out what this newsroom could look like and if this could be real, and like really started putting meat on the bones of this idea that she had. By the time I left there, I was pretty sold. I was running on adrenaline and Diet Coke, but like I get to the airport and I fire off this email to her because I'm just so energized and inspired and excited about the possibility of this newsroom. And I tell her, like, look, I'm in, I want to do this with you. Like, I will be your LeBron James. We will do this together. And she's just like, oh, I'm so, encouraged by your note, but like, no, actually you're going to be my Serena Williams. But like, literally, like at that point, I was like, the point was I will put this on my back and do whatever needs to be done because, I'm not trying to go back to legacy media. I think we can do this. I know that this is an idea whose time has come. Like, honestly, I was like, how has nobody done this already? But like, now that it's here. Like,
but of course, no one's done it.
Of course, no one's done it. And we were going into this. It was the 100th anniversary of suffrage. Like I said, you had six women on the ballot. Let's see what's going to happen, right? Oh, by the way, you get 2 white men in their 70s, again on a ticket. It's like, what do we say about that? Like, we can say all the things in this place because this is the place where we can say what needs to be said.
In the 19th news, let's talk about the origin of the name and the asterisk.
Absolutely.
Because that's important.
So it comes out of that super secret meeting. As we're talking about all these different aspects of what this newsroom could be, Emily is thinking about the name of the newsroom, right? And so she was pretty sold on the idea that she wanted to call it the 19th. But at the same time, she was fully aware of the fraught history of the 19th Amendment, right? that white women had basically thrown Black women under the bus on their way to, get suffrage for themselves. And so she was like, well, can we call it the 19th? Should we call it the 19th? Especially given what we're trying to stand for. We're trying to stand for equity. We're trying to stand for, real representation and intersectionality and all these things, right? And and so we're sitting there thinking about this, and I say, yes, we can call it the 19th, but we should put an asterisk on the end in recognition of these Black women who's, had to work for twice as long to get their access to the franchise. And so that was it. And she was just like, yes, that's exactly what we're going to do. And I will tell you, in that moment, I was like, this white woman is the real deal. Like, wait a minute. Like, I seriously, like, I was not going to leave, again, what was in my dream job to work for any two white women who may or may not have been serious about what they wanted to start, right? But like, I really, really believed, even if we didn't know how we were going to get to equity, even if we didn't know how we were going to create this newsroom that left behind the baggage of the places where we were, like, her commitment to that in that moment, her commitment to that journey was clear to me. And so, like I said, I did not know her before we started the 19th. But I mean, the gift of this journey is that we have become sisters in this work. And that is extraordinary because, at this point in our lives, how many new friends, much less friends that feel like family do you really get? And so that was definitely something that I did not expect, but that has been a gift of this project for sure.
I mean, you're two of my favorite people that I think I've met from building Argent, and you were also very vulnerable in sharing your story in a PBS documentary.
Oh, yes. Breaking the news. Come for the hairstyles and my dog, stay for the journalism. Oh my God.
But it's a very vulnerable thing to do. And I think it is a window into what it looks like to start a company as women, and centering your newsroom around marginalized communities. Like, everything about it is a nightmare from an investing perspective because it's that trifecta of, like, female founded, female specific problem.
And don't forget intersectional. I mean, yes, like what who we are trying to talk about and who we write for and about is, that's not everybody's cup of tea, right? And maybe it was in fashion for 5 minutes during the reckoning, but not so much right now. So for us to continue to press that case, and for us to say that, again, this is the unfinished work of this democracy, and to convince people that they should believe that as we believe it, like, that is a full-time second job.
Just from my own experiences, and then from having a front row seat to just how, like, grossly underfunded female founded initiatives and efforts are. It's really Herculean what you all have been able to accomplish.
Thank you.
And it's fun. I mean, it's fun to watch. A big theme of this conversation, and really how I've heard you speak about your career, is that someone's experiences and identities make them uniquely qualified to report on history. Can you explain that? And it's a bit different than how we're told journalists should act, objective and taking themselves out of the story. I mean, I think it's obvious based on how our history books are written, but I'd love to hear you speak to that, because there's really no one more qualified.
Well, thank you. All right. So first of all, the notion of objectivity in journalism is bullshit. I hope I can say that on here.
Absolutely.
It's a myth, right? But when your default setting is white and male, and that is who, created journalism, of course, objectivity is fine with you. That is about white comfort, male comfort, not interested, right? For somebody like me, objectivity was never an option in journalism. My job is to tell the truth, right? Be fair, but to tell the truth, the capital T truth, right? About what is happening in our country. Like, the biggest thing that I learned when I worked at the Daily World was that my lived experience was an asset to my storytelling and not a liability. That me being a Black woman from Atlanta helped me see stories in a way that other people were not going to see them, right? The fact that I grew up going with my mom to vote in every single election when I was small. We went to the same precinct, our city hall in my small town outside of Atlanta. And that 3 days after my 18th birthday, my mom took me to that same precinct so I could get my first voter registration card. Voting means something to me. So that I now work at a newsroom that is named for an amendment about voting, like, that's not surprising, but also that's exactly where I want to be telling the kinds of stories that I think we need to tell. So no, I tell, young people, I tell every one of my colleagues that comes into the door, all of your experiences and everything that you are and everything that you have done, bring that to the work, because that is what makes you qualified to see stories that nobody else sees. I think about people like our economy reporter, who's the daughter of Cuban immigrants who had to work in jobs that were not nearly the jobs that they worked when they were in Cuba because of how this country is set up, right? So like the way that she even thinks about being a business reporter, right? Business reporters cover power, right? They don't cover the people that are on the bottom making that power possible, the workers. But that's exactly who she's focused on at all times. And no wonder, because of who she is and who her family was, like she's able to do that, right? To have people focused on caregiving who have personal experience with that in their own lives. For us to have people in our organization who are parents, right? Even if they're not like in our newsroom, but like people whose experiences we can draw on that may turn into journalism. Like that means a lot. It meant a lot to hear from people about their experiences in the pandemic, which is when we were forged as a newsroom. Like all of that has only made our journalism that much more honest and accurate, I feel like. So yeah, I mean, goodbye to objectivity. We need to let that go.
It's completely true too, because it's also gonna be reflected in the stories that you're even telling,
Yes.
right? That you're even showing up for. Like historically, we haven't seen a lot of the topics that you all have written on because it's been an industry that's been dominated by white men for
Absolutely
since the beginning of time. So
absolutely.
I'd just love to leave this off by asking what you think makes a successful journalist, skill sets, or traits, and how is that perhaps different than what you thought it took at the beginning of your career?
Well, if you love free food, no, I'm just kidding. It's not true. No, I mean, what makes a successful journalist? Being open and curious and listening more than you talk. Like if you have those qualities, you're probably on your way. You don't have to be the most extroverted person, but you have to be interested in the world around you. And that includes the world that is not always in alignment with things that you agree with people who are in your lives naturally. Yes, somebody who has to be willing to go there, to show up and to tell the truth. Like, I mean, I think if you are somebody who has a pretty strong sense of right and wrong, who sees things that are unfair or unequal and says, I have to say something about that, journalism may be for you. It takes all kinds to tell the story of this country. So why not you? Is what I would say. If you are committed to studying and learning how to do this, like we need you. I'm tired. I could use the help, but like, I think about our newsroom and just the range of life experiences and backgrounds and pathways that led them to the 19th. And like, we need all of those people. We need all of that for the 19th to be what it is. And for us to tell the stories that we need to tell about the people that still are just too often unseen and unheard in our democracy by too much of political journalism.
Now my final and favorite segment. Would you rather?
Let's do it.
Would you rather stay organized digitally or only write everything down with pen and paper?
Oh my God, write everything down. I have so many planners.
I have more to-do lists than to-dones.
Definitely. Post-it notes are my friend.
Would you rather take a meeting at 8 a.m. on a Monday or 4 p.m. on a Friday?
8 a.m. on a Monday.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
That's different. That's great. Most people say 4 p.m. on a Friday.
Why?
Yeah, exactly.
That's standing between me and happy hour.
I think you and I are like doers, so we just like to get started.
Let's knock it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Would you rather write a great piece of feedback or receive a great piece of feedback?
Oh, man. Receive a great piece of feedback.
Would you rather be the oldest person in the office or the youngest?
The oldest person in the office.
Oh, it's so definitive.
Mm-hmm.
Youngest.
Why?
No idea.
Okay.
I like having mentors, I think. I like having adults in the room. I'm not ready to be the adult.
I don't know. I feel like I want to be the oldest because when you're young, there's such a pressure to keep generating new and original ideas. And I'm not saying that I still don't try to do that, but also like this is the point in our lives where we actually do get to actualize everything that's brought us to this point and maybe impart some of that to other people.
I'll get there too. I'll get there someday.
You're already doing some of it.
Would you rather have coworkers who type very loudly or speak very loudly on the phone?
Type very loudly. I've been with those people that speak very loudly on the phone, and it's just like, I mean, look, we don't have to be in a real newsroom anymore, so like that is not really my issue. But if it was, and also like eat in the break room, right? For those of you who are still in an office, the utensils clanking on the bowls, I can't. That was my big one.
Would you rather be late to a meeting where you're presenting or where your boss is presenting?
Oh, probably where I'm presenting, because I hate walking in on the middle of somebody else's presentation. I feel so bad if for whatever reason if I have to pop in and somebody's already started, because I don't want to interrupt them. I don't want them to be. I don't want them their rhythm to be interrupted by me being late.
What a politically correct answer. I'm for sure boss. I'm gonna walk in on there late. I can't be late to my own. No way. Would you rather accidentally leave your mic unmuted or your camera on?
Camera on.
Yeah, same. Would you rather respond to an email right away or mark it as unread?
Oh, there's a better version of me that would love to respond right away, but the real me is you don't want to see my inbox. I'm not an inbox zero person. Never have been. Never will be. Sorry.
Oh, it's a really great place.
Somebody's watching this and is waiting for me to respond to an email right now.
I am an inbox zero person, but like in my current state, there's no way for me to be. I'm getting so many emails a day. Impossible. Superhuman, though. Good opportunity to plug Superhuman. Great email software. With that, we wrap up and we head to our work friends dinner tonight.
Yes, I've earned my wine.
That's
Thank
right.
you, Sally.
Thank you for doing this. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. And thanks for being my friend.
Thanks for keeping me fashionable while I'm out here trying to cover this democracy. I appreciate you. Thank you for your service.
Honored to do it. Thanks for listening to Work Friends, a podcast from Argent. Listen and follow on all podcast platforms and subscribe to the Argent YouTube channel for more clips and bonus content. Plus, email your work questions and dilemmas at workfriends@argentwork.com for a chance to have one of our amazing guests weigh in with advice. I'm Sally Christensen, and we'll see you next time.
Work Friends.
Work Friends is produced by Gina Marinelli with editing by Justin Kropp. Our theme music is by Karina De Piano and Melanie Naima.